Welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we aren't just going over data or dry facts. We're actually taking a really dark, deeply psychological journey into literally one of the most famous literary mysteries of all time. So, step with me into the foggy, gaslit streets of Victorian London. We're going to unravel a story that has haunted readers for over a century.
What if the monster you fear isn't someone else, but you? Just let that sink in for a second. Imagine discovering that the most respectable, upstanding person you know actually has a secret, horrifying identity. And worse, that identity is a murderer. That's the chilling premise we're dissecting today. Chapter 1, A Monster in the Fog. To really understand this case, we've got to look through the eyes of a quiet, highly rational London lawyer named Mr. Gabriel John Utterson. So our story kicks off with this incredibly bizarre, disturbing anecdote. Utterson is out for a walk with his friend, Mr. Enfield, who points out this strange, neglected-looking building. Enfield tells him about this horrifying event he witnessed in the dead of night. He says a mysterious, truly ugly man simply trampled right over a young girl in the street without even a second of hesitation or remorse, just walked right over her. This monstrous man's name is Edward Hyde. But here's the catch. To avoid a massive scandal, Hyde pays off the girl's family with a check, and that check is signed by none other than the incredibly respectable, wealthy, and upstanding Dr. Henry Jekyll. Utterson is completely baffled by this. Why on earth would a man with Jekyll's pristine reputation have any connection to a violent creep like Hyde? Chapter 2, The Dark Connection. See, as Jekyll's lawyer, Utterson actually holds Jekyll's will, a document that suddenly starts looking incredibly sinister. The mystery escalates with terrifying speed here. Let's trace it. Day 1. Utterson reviews the will, which explicitly states that if Jekyll disappears or dies, his entire massive estate goes directly to Edward Hyde. Obviously, Utterson suspects blackmail. He gets kind of obsessed and decides to track Hyde down. Weeks later, he finally meets him in the shadows of the city, and the encounter leaves him just deeply unsettled. But it doesn't stop there. Months later, this bizarre connection absolutely explodes into violence. An elderly, beloved gentleman, Sir Danvers Carew, is brutally beaten to death in the street with a heavy wooden cane. The murderer? Edward Hyde. And let's talk about Hyde for a second, because he is uniquely terrifying. When people meet him, they simply feel that there is something wrong about him. Like, Hyde doesn't have fangs or claws or some massive, obvious physical deformity. He looks mostly human. He's terrifying because he radiates this twisted, morally corrupt energy. People who meet him instinctively, almost violently, hate him. It's like he's a walking, breathing embodiment of pure malice. Chapter 3, The Locked Room Mystery. Now, as the police launch a massive manhunt for the murderer, Hyde vanishes into thin air. And Dr. Jekyll? Well, his behavior takes a deeply terrifying turn. The clues here are just baffling and, honestly, pretty grim. First, after a brief period of acting like this reformed, highly social man, Dr. Jekyll abruptly locks himself in his laboratory and flatly refuses all visitors. Then, a mutual friend, the completely healthy and respected Dr. Lanyon, suddenly falls physically ill from sheer terror. Lanyon refuses to even speak of Jekyll, leaves behind a sealed, secret document that's only to be opened after Jekyll's death, and promptly dies. Just dies from the shock of whatever he witnessed. Finally, Jekyll's loyal servant, Poole, comes to Utterson in a blind panic. For days, strange, desperate noises and a literal foreign voice have been echoing from behind that locked laboratory door. Poole is totally convinced Jekyll has been murdered and that the killer is still trapped inside. Chapter 4, The Horrifying Truth. Okay, the suspense has reached a boiling point. Utterson and Poole just can't wait any longer. They grab an axe and smash down the heavy wooden door to the laboratory. But inside, they don't find a murdered Dr. Jekyll. Instead, they find the twitching, dying body of Mr. Hyde, who's just taken his own life with poison. And Dr. Jekyll is nowhere to be found. But he has left behind a comprehensive confession, and this document, along with the one left by the late Dr. Lanyon, reveals a twist that literally shocked Victorian readers to their core. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde are the exact same person. Jekyll's confession breaks down the exact mechanics of this really dark experiment. See, he was obsessed with the idea that humans aren't entirely good or completely evil, but rather this volatile mix of conflicting personalities. So, step 1. Jekyll, a highly respected man, secretly harbored these dark, shameful impulses he desperately wanted to indulge. Step 2. Because he was a brilliant scientist, he created a complex chemical formula to separate these dual natures. And step 3, by drinking this burning potion, he could literally, physically transform his body into Edward Hyde. As Hyde, Jekyll arrogantly believed he could run wild, committing terrible acts in the night without ever damaging the pristine daytime reputation of Dr. Henry Jekyll. Chapter 5. The Monster Within. So we know the what. Now, we really need to unpack the why. This brilliantly illustrates the core theme of the entire story, the duality of human nature. On one side, you have Dr. Jekyll, public, respectable, and heavily restrained by the strict, frankly suffocating social rules of Victorian society. On the other side, there's Mr. Hyde, private, fueled entirely by dark desires, and completely unrestrained. Victorian society placed enormous, almost crushing importance on appearing perfectly good at all times. So Jekyll's fatal flaw wasn't simply having dark desires, it was his absolute obsession with hiding them behind a flawless facade rather than actually confronting and managing them. And the story uses some incredible symbolism to tell this tale. Take the mysterious door that Hyde uses to enter and exit the laboratory. It represents the strict boundary between public identity and private desires. From the outside front, Jekyll's house is wealthy, warm, it's welcoming. But this neglected, windowless back door, it's a literal and psychological entrance into his hidden, darker world. It's the secret passage where respectable society ends and shameful indulgence begins. And then, of course, there's the potion itself. This chemical mixture isn't just some cool sci-fi trick. It's a powerful, tragic metaphor for attempting to escape responsibility. Jekyll genuinely believed he could separate his actions from his identity. He wanted to be able to say, hey, Hyde did it, not me. He wanted the intoxicating thrill of the crime without the heavy burden of the consequence. But you can't separate your actions from yourself without paying a terrible price. Jekyll falls into this really vicious cycle. He indulges his dark desires by becoming Hyde, but by repeatedly giving Hyde that freedom, Hyde grows stronger, physically taller, and way more dominant. Soon, the potion isn't even necessary. Jekyll begins transforming into Hyde spontaneously, in his sleep or actually just while sitting quietly in a public park. The evil identity he so arrogantly thought he could control completely takes over, and it eventually traps him in a nightmare prison of his own making. Which brings us to the cruelest realization of all. Hyde represents desires that already existed within Jekyll. The potion didn't just create evil out of thin air. It simply stripped away the conscience, releasing the darkness that was already locked inside the respectable doctor. Hyde isn't a separate invading alien monster. Hyde is Jekyll, without restraint. Ultimately, Jekyll destroyed himself by refusing to acknowledge his own darker impulses. So I'll leave you with this. If you had the potion, if you could completely separate the absolute darkest part of yourself from your identity and act without any consequences to your reputation, would you do it? Thank you so much for exploring the shadows with me today. Keep questioning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.